Ever feel like you're being watched? That prickly sensation on the back of your neck when you're alone in your own home? For most of us, it's just our imagination playing tricks. But for a young woman named Clara, that feeling was a terrifying reality. This story is so chilling, so unsettling, it's hard to believe it isn't fiction. But the most horrifying part, it's based on true events. Clara lived alone in a cozy, ground-floor apartment. It was her sanctuary, the one place she felt completely safe, or so she thought. It all started subtly. A misplaced book she was sure she'd left on the coffee table. The thermostat turned down a few degrees overnight. Little things she brushed off as forgetfulness, signs of a busy, stressful life. Who hasn't misplaced their keys or forgotten to lock a door, right? She'd laugh it off, chiding herself for being so absent-minded. But the strange occurrences began to escalate. One evening, while cooking dinner, she heard a faint sound from her bedroom. A soft creak like the floorboards settling. She paused, listening intently. Silence. Shrugging, she turned back to her stove, dismissing it as the old building groaning. But a seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning, she noticed her favorite mug, the one she always left by the sink, was clean and dry in the dish rack. She lived alone. She hadn't washed it. A cold knot formed in her stomach. This was different. This wasn't forgetfulness. The feeling of being watched intensified. She'd be reading on her sofa and a sudden chill would sweep through the room, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. She started triple-checking the locks on her doors and windows before bed, her nightly ritual becoming an anxious obsession. She even wedged a chair under a front doorknob, a desperate attempt to feel secure. But the feeling persisted, a silent, unseen presence that haunted the corners of her apartment. Her home, once a comfort, was starting to feel like a cage. One night, she was jolted awake by a noise, not a creak this time, but a distinct, soft thud from the living room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She lay frozen in her bed, straining her ears in the pitch-black darkness. Was it just a book falling off a shelf? Or was it something else? Every shadow seemed to twist into a menacing shape. Every normal house sound amplified into a threat. Minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. Finally, summoning every ounce of courage, she grabbed the heavy flashlight from her nightstand and crept out of her bedroom. She swept the beam of light across the living room. Everything appeared normal. The books were on their shelves. The windows were locked. The chair was still wedged under the door. A wave of relief washed over her, followed by embarrassment. She was letting her imagination run wild. She was about to head back to bed when the beam of her flashlight caught something on the floor. A single, muddy footprint near the small window in her kitchen. Panic set in. She fled her apartment and spent the night at a friend's house, recounting the terrifying discovery. Her friend, though concerned, tried to rationalize it. Maybe she'd overlooked an unlocked window. Maybe it was an old footprint she hadn't noticed before. Doubt crept back in. Was she going crazy? Was stress making her paranoid? Reluctantly, she returned home the next day, determined to find a logical explanation. She searched every inch of her apartment, looking for any sign of forced entry, any clue that could explain the impossible footprint. She found nothing. The apartment was exactly as she had left it, eerily still and quiet. Clara tried to convince herself it was all in her head. She went about her week, trying to force a sense of normalcy, but the fear was a constant, low hum beneath the surface. Then came the incident that shattered her world completely. She came home from work, exhausted, and flopped onto her bed. As she reached for her phone on the nightstand, her fingers brushed against something unfamiliar tucked under her pillow. It was a small, folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, she unfolded it. On it were just 3 words, written in a messy, unfamiliar scrawl. "You look pretty." The note wasn't just a note. It was a violation. Someone had been in her room, in her bed. They had been close enough to watch her, to leave this terrifying message right where she slept. The sanctuary was gone. This wasn't her home anymore. It was a stage, and she was the unwilling star of a stranger's horrifying show. She immediately called the police. They were sympathetic, but found no signs of a break. To them, it was a strange prank, but without evidence, there was little they could do. They advised her to install better locks and perhaps a security camera. Clara didn't wait. That very day, she bought a small motion-activated camera and hid it on a bookshelf, aimed at her living room and front door. She felt a sliver of control returning. She would catch whoever was doing this. The first night with the camera was sleepless. Every creak and groan of the building had her heart leaping into her throat. She checked the live feed on her phone a dozen times, but the screen remained black, showing only her dark, empty apartment. Nothing. The next day, she went to work. Her phone clutched in her hand, constantly checking the feed. Still, nothing. Maybe, just maybe, the presence was gone. That evening, after getting home, she sat down to review the footage from the previous night. Just in case. She fast-forwarded through hours of black, uneventful footage. It was all empty. She was about to give up, to accept that she was losing her mind, when she saw it. A flicker of movement. She rewound the footage, her breath catching in her throat. The timestamp was 3:17 a.m. On the screen, a figure was slowly, silently, emerging from the shadows, but it wasn't coming from the door or a window. It was coming from inside her own kitchen pantry. The figure, a man she had never seen before, moved with a chilling familiarity through her apartment. He walked to her refrigerator, opened it, and helped himself to her food. He sat on her sofa, flipping through her photo albums. He even picked up the remote and turned on the TV, the volume so low it would have been inaudible from her bedroom. He had been living in her walls, in the crawl space behind her pantry. For how long? Weeks, months. The misplaced objects, the thermostat changes, the footprints, the note dot. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This stranger hadn't been breaking in. He had been there all along, a silent, parasitic roommate. The footage ended with the man retreating back into the pantry just before dawn. Clara was paralyzed by a fear so profound it felt like ice water flooding her veins. He was in the apartment with her. Right now, hiding, waiting. She didn't scream. She didn't run. With a calmness born of pure terror, she picked up her phone, her purse, and her keys. She walked out the front door, closed it gently behind her, and didn't stop running until she reached the police station. The story you just heard is a dramatization, but it is based on a number of documented cases of frogging, the act of secretly living in another person's home. It's a terrifying reminder that sometimes the monster isn't under the bed, but hiding just a few feet away, in plain sight. Thank you so much for watching. If this story sent a chill down your spine, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more animated horror stories based on events that are all too real. Stay safe, and always trust your instincts.